The flash of cameras was a physical pressure against Anya Sharma's skin, 1,000 tiny suns flaring and dying in the space of a heartbeat. She blinked, the afterimage of the crowd seared onto her retinas, but she barely registered the discomfort. Tonight, she was incandescent, a star burning at the center of her own universe. Tonight, the opulent ballroom of the Atherton Hotel, with its vaulted ceilings and gilded archways, was hers. $800 million. The number wasn't just a figure on a contract. It was a triumphant symphony playing on a loop in her mind, drowning out the polite murmur of the assembled elite, CEOs, venture capitalists, journalists, and predators. Her company, Innovate, had just secured the Atlas partnership, the single largest deal in the data infrastructure industry this year. It was a validation that screamed louder than any critic, a monument built from the ashes of every no she'd ever heard. At 32, Anya was the architect of this miracle. She had taken a kernel of an idea, a revolutionary, quantum-resistant data encryption protocol, and nurtured it in a cramped, coffee-stained apartment, convincing a handful of brilliant misfits to believe in her vision. Now, that vision was a billion-dollar empire, and she was its undisputed queen. She moved through the throng, a radiant supernova in a sea of black-tie suits and shimmering gowns. A waiter proffered a flute of champagne, the bubbles a frantic celebration of their own. She took it, her fingers brushing the cool glass, but didn't drink. She was already intoxicated. "Anya, darling, you've outdone yourself," the voice boomed from her left. Victor Sterling, a venture capitalist with a reputation as sharp as the angles of his jawline, gripped her hand, his eyes gleaming with undisguised admiration and the cold calculation of a man who'd just seen his investment multiply tenfold. "I always knew you had it in you, even when you were pitching from that shoebox you called an office." Anya's smile was genuine, though it felt practiced. "Thank you, Victor. Your faith and your capital meant the world. You took a chance when no one else would." He chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. "Don't get sentimental on me now, Anya. Sentimentality is a luxury we can't afford at this altitude. Just remember who believed in you when you're building your private orbital station." He winked, a gesture that was somehow both avuncular and predatory, before melting back into the crowd. As he departed, a familiar presence materialized at her elbow. Liam Walsh, her chief technology officer and the closest thing she had to a best friend. His face, usually a canvas for easy smiles and sarcastic remarks, was etched with a concern that seemed out of place amidst the revelry. "You okay, Anya?" he asked, his voice a low murmur meant only for her. "You've got that look, the one you get before a product launch, like you're calculating every possible point of failure." "Overwhelmed is an understatement," she admitted, finally taking a sip of the champagne. The crisp, dry taste was a brief anchor in the swirling euphoria. "It's just surreal, all this." She gestured vaguely with her glass, encompassing the chandeliers, the orchestra, the powerful people vying for a moment of her time. "I feel like I'm watching a movie about someone else's life." Liam squeezed her arm, a grounding, familiar pressure. "You deserve it, every damn bit of it. You've worked harder, slept less, and fought dirtier than anyone in this room. So, for God's sake, try to enjoy the moment. The code will still be there tomorrow." She nodded, forcing the smile to reach her eyes. He was right. This was the culmination, the prize for all the birthdays missed, the relationships sacrificed on the altar of ambition, the relentless, grinding pressure to be not just good, but flawless. But even as she smiled, a nagging, cold thread of unease wove through her euphoria. It was the same feeling she'd had before her first major funding round collapsed, a primal instinct that whispered of impending gravity. Her eyes scanned the room, not seeing the admirers, but searching for a shadow she couldn't name. She pushed the thought aside, locking it away in a mental vault. Tonight was about victory. Tonight was about Anya Sharma, the woman who had looked into the abyss of failure and forced it to blink. Or so she thought. Amidst the kaleidoscope of vibrant silks and polished egos, a figure stood apart, a study in stillness. He was a man of unremarkable appearance, the kind you would forget moments after passing him on the street. His suit, a nondescript shade of charcoal, was well-tailored, yet seemed to deliberately eschew style, hanging on his lean frame as if it wished to be invisible. He stood near a potted fern in the corner of the ballroom, a silent observer, his presence as subtle and absorbing as a black hole. This was Mr. Alastair Harrison. He was the final, crucial investor, the one who had provided the last $100 million that sealed the Atlas deal. Yet, unlike Victor Sterling, who wore his success like a crown, Mr. Harrison carried his with the quiet weight of a secret. Anya had met him only twice. The first time, in a sterile Zurich conference room, he had asked three precise, devastatingly simple questions that had cut to the heart of her business model, exposing assumptions she hadn't even known she'd made. The second time, to sign the final papers, he had said nothing at all, merely nodding as he applied his signature with a fountain pen. He represented Veritas Holdings, a notoriously private Swiss investment firm. The due diligence on him had been like trying to nail smoke to a wall. But there was something about him that unsettled her. It wasn't anything he did or said. It was the stillness. In a room full of people performing their success, his silence felt like a judgment. His eyes, a pale, watery blue, didn't just see, they seemed to appraise, to calculate the intrinsic value of everything and everyone they fell upon. As the night wore on and her champagne flute was refilled for the third time, Anya found her gaze repeatedly drawn to his corner. He was watching her, not with the avarice of Victor or the camaraderie of Liam, but with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a rare specimen. She tried to catch his eye, to offer a smile of acknowledgement, but he simply gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod before his gaze drifted away, leaving her feeling oddly dismissed. She finally voiced her unease to Liam during a lull near the dessert table. "It's him, Harrison, he gives me the creeps." Liam followed her gaze and snorted, popping a chocolate-covered strawberry into his mouth. "Him? Don't worry about Harrison, he's a ghost, a bean counter from some alpine vault. He probably doesn't understand the first thing about our tech. He just follows the numbers, and the numbers led him to you. Take his money and be glad he's quiet." But Anya wasn't so sure. Liam saw the world in code, binary, logical, predictable. Mr. Harrison felt like a variable that didn't belong in the equation, an exponent that could change the entire sum of her life in an instant. He was a mystery, a silent enigma lurking in the shadows of her triumph, and she had a chilling premonition that his silence was a prelude to something deafening. The catalyst arrived in the form of Marcus Thorne. CEO of Apex Technologies, Marcus was everything Anya was not: old money, old school, and openly resentful of the disruptors he believed were diluting the industry. Apex had been the frontrunner for the Atlas deal until Innovate's superior technology and Anya's relentless drive had steamrolled their bid. Marcus had been drinking heavily, his face flushed a mottled red. He stood with a coterie of other also-rans, their laughter a little too loud, their eyes a little too sharp as they tracked Anya's movements. The buzz of the crowd near them had taken on a malicious edge. "Lucky, that's all," Sarah Chen of Global Solutions was saying, her voice carrying. "Right place, right time. And with that kind of blind funding from some European recluse, anyone could have pulled it off." Marcus smirked, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the solitary figure in the corner. "Speaking of the recluse," he slurred, grabbing a fresh glass of Burgundy from a passing tray. "Let's go pay our respects to the man who bought the golden ticket." A wave of nervous laughter followed him as he strode, unsteady on his feet, toward Mr. Harrison. Anya's breath hitched. She took a step forward, but Liam held her back. "Don't," he warned. "Let Thorne make an ass of himself. It's what he does best." "Mr. Harrison," Marcus's voice cut through the ambient noise, too loud, too aggressive. "A moment of your time." Mr. Harrison turned slowly. His expression was neutral, a blank page. "Mr. Thorne." "I just wanted to congratulate you on your investment," Marcus said, dripping the word in sarcasm. "Must be nice, writing a check and watching the little people do all the actual work. Must make you feel powerful." The silence from Mr. Harrison was profound. It wasn't the silence of weakness, but of immense, controlled pressure. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He simply waited. Marcus, unnerved by the lack of reaction, puffed out his chest. "You know, I don't think you understand what you've invested in. This isn't a real company. It's a house of cards built by a girl who got lucky. You haven't earned your place here. You're just a tourist." He raised the glass of red wine, his hand trembling with rage and alcohol. The entire section of the ballroom had fallen silent, sensing the impending car crash. "In fact," Marcus sneered, his voice echoing in the sudden hush, "I think a man like you is unworthy of sharing the same air as real innovators." Time seemed to slow, crystallizing into a single horrifying frame. Anya watched, paralyzed, as Marcus Thorne deliberately tipped the glass. The deep crimson liquid arced through the air, a splash of violent color against the muted tones of the ballroom. It splattered against Mr. Harrison's head, drenching his gray hair, running in rivulets down his temples, and staining the pristine white of his collar a grotesque purple. The ballroom ceased to exist. There was no sound, no movement. Every person, from the lowliest intern to the most powerful CEO, was frozen, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and voyeuristic thrill. Mr. Harrison stood motionless. Wine dripped from his chin onto his ruined suit. A single drop hung from the tip of his nose. For a breathtaking second, Anya saw it, a flash of something terrifying in his pale eyes. It wasn't just anger, it was a glimpse of absolute glacial fury, a power so vast and cold it felt like staring into the heart of a dead star. It was the look of a man who could unmake worlds. And then it was gone, vanished behind a mask of impenetrable calm. He didn't look at Marcus. He didn't utter a word of protest or curse. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a plain white handkerchief, and carefully wiped the wine from his eyes. He then turned, and with a dignity that made the opulent room seem cheap and tawdry, he walked. He didn't hurry. His steps were measured, precise, as he moved through the parted crowd, a wine-stained ghost exiting the scene of his own humiliation. He didn't look back at Anya, at Marcus, at any of them. The door to the ballroom swung shut behind him with a soft, final click. The silence held for a moment longer, and then the room erupted in a frantic, horrified buzz. Marcus, suddenly sober and pale, stood clutching the empty glass, realizing the magnitude of his mistake. But it was Anya who felt the true, chilling weight of the moment. She stood amidst the ruins of her perfect evening, watching the door through which the quiet investor had disappeared, and knew, with a certainty that turned her blood to ice, that nothing would ever be the same again. The party died a swift, unceremonious death. The orchestra tried to restart, but the music sounded hollow and forced. Conversations were hushed, eyes darting towards Anya, filled with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. The triumph of minutes before had curdled into something awkward and sour. "Damage control," Liam muttered, his face grim. "Now, Anya, we need to get ahead of this." He was right, but her body felt leaden, her mind a whirlwind of panic. She mechanically allowed Liam to steer her through the crowd, offering tight, meaningless smiles to mumbled condolences. Her publicist was already on the phone, voice a frantic whisper. Victor Sterling caught her arm, his expression unreadable. "A messy business," he said quietly. "Harrison is an unknown variable. This complicates things." "Complicates," Anya whispered, her voice hoarse. "Victor, he was publicly humiliated at my event." "Your event," Victor echoed, his gaze intense. "Which means the responsibility and the fallout lands on you. Contain it, Anya, or it will contain you." His words were a cold splash of reality. She pulled away, feeling the walls of the gilded cage closing in. She had to find Mr. Harrison. She had to apologize, to mitigate, to fix this. She broke away from Liam, ignoring his calls, and hurried out of the ballroom, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm on the marble floor of the hotel lobby. She scanned the area, her heart hammering against her ribs. Nothing. The concierge, when she rushed over, confirmed it with a polite, professional nod. "Mr. Harrison retrieved his coat and departed approximately 5 minutes ago, Ms. Sharma. He did not leave a message." Gone just like that. The finality of it was terrifying. The next 24 hours were a blur of frantic activity and growing dread. She called Mr. Harrison's number, a generic voicemail. She sent emails, no response. She had her team track down a contact for Veritas Holdings, a single, unmonitored email address, and a P.O. box in Zurich. It was like trying to grasp a shadow. Meanwhile, the digital world exploded. The incident, captured on a dozen smartphone cameras, went viral. The clips were edited for maximum drama, set to ominous music. Headlines screamed, "Billion-dollar CEO LETS investor be tarred and feathered," and "Wine and Winers, Tech's new royalty shows its true COLOS." Commentators dissected the video frame by frame. They analyzed Anya's frozen expression, labeling her complicit, weak, and out of her depth. Marcus Thorne, after a day of radio silence, issued a mealy-mouthed apology through his PR team, stating he had been overcome by the emotion of the evening and deeply regretted any offense caused, effectively throwing the blame onto the celebratory atmosphere Anya had fostered. Her board was nervous. Her phone rang incessantly with calls from worried investors. The $800 million from the Atlas deal wasn't in their account yet. It was a promise, a signature on paper that now felt dangerously fragile. On the morning of the second day, haggard from lack of sleep, Anya stood in her pristine, minimalist office overlooking the city skyline. The view that usually filled her with ambition now seemed like a panorama of everything she was about to lose. "We have to issue a statement," Liam said, packing before her glass desk. A full-throated condemnation of Thorne and a personal, heartfelt apology to Harrison. "We need to show we're on the right side of this." "We are on the right side," Anya snapped, her nerves frayed. "I didn't pour the damn wine." "No, but you reaped the benefits of his money, and you failed to protect him at your own party. In the court of public opinion, that makes you an accomplice." Liam stopped packing and looked at her, his expression grave. "Anya, this isn't about fairness, it's about perception. And right now, the perception is that you're ungrateful and your house is not in order." He was right, she knew he was right. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "Draft the statement, make it strong. I want to personally deliver a written copy to his hotel, maybe if he sees I'm serious." It was a desperate, flailing move, but it was all she had. 2 hours later, clutching a thick, cream-colored envelope containing their meticulously worded apology, she stood in the lobby of the Pendleton, the city's most discreet and expensive hotel, where Mr. Harrison was supposedly staying. The manager, a man so unctuous he was almost liquid, met her with a pained smile. "Ms. Sharma, a pleasure, as always. However, I'm afraid Mr. Harrison has checked out." "When?" Anya asked, her heart sinking. "Early this morning. He left no forwarding address." Did he say anything about the incident, about me?" The manager's smile didn't waver, but his eyes became evasive. "Mr. Harrison is a man of very few words, Ms. Sharma." He said nothing at all. The drive back to her office was a funeral procession. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, a monument to her futility. She felt a profound, chilling certainty that Mr. Harrison's silence was not the prelude to forgiveness, but to something far, far worse. She was right. As she stepped out of the elevator into the Innovate headquarters, the energy was wrong. The usual chaotic, creative buzz was absent. It was silent, save for the frantic tapping of keyboards. Her employees wouldn't meet her eyes. Liam was waiting for her, his face ashen. He held a single sheet of paper. "What is it?" Anya asked, her voice a whisper. "It's from the lawyers for the Atlas Group," he said, his hand trembling slightly. "They're invoking the morality clause." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" "Their statement says," Liam's voice broke. He cleared his throat and read, "In light of the deeply troubling events surrounding the celebratory gala for our partnership, which call into question the professional culture and leadership stability of Innovate, the Atlas Group is exercising its right to terminate the agreement, effective immediately." The words hit her like physical blows. Terminate, effective immediately. "No," she breathed, stumbling back against the wall. "They can't. The deal's the money." "It's gone, Anya," Liam said, his voice hollow. "The $800 million is gone." But he wasn't finished. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a terror she had never seen in him before. "There's more. It came by private courier, for your eyes only." He handed her the sheet of paper. It was not from a lawyer. It was plain, high-quality bond paper. At the top was a simple, elegant letterhead, Veritas Holdings, and below it a single line of text, typed in a classic font. Civility is the currency of business. Your account is now overdrawn. It was unsigned. But Anya didn't need a signature. The message and its author were perfectly clear. Mr. Harrison wasn't just a wronged investor. He was the architect of her ruin, and he had just demolished her empire with the quiet efficiency of a man swatting a fly. The days that followed were a freefall into a nightmare. The news of the Atlas deal's collapse broke like a tsunami, wiping out billions in market value for Innovate in a matter of hours. The vultures descended. News vans camped outside her building. Her personal social media was flooded with vitriol. She was a meme, a cautionary tale, a punchline. Her board, in a panic, held an emergency meeting. Anya sat at the head of the table, still dressed in the power suit that now felt like a costume, and listened as the men and women she had made rich systematically dismantled her. Catastrophic failure of judgment, Anya. The brand is toxic. We need to install interim leadership, a steady hand to navigate this. They weren't asking, they were telling. She was out, ousted from the company she had founded, built, and breathed for a decade. They offered her a severance package, generous, they said, to avoid further unpleasantness. It was a bribe for her silence, a payout to make their coup clean. She took it. What choice did she have? She was too numb, too broken to fight. She packed her belongings from the CEO office into a single cardboard box, a framed photo of her and her team from the early days, a stress ball shaped like a microchip, a wilting peace lily. Liam helped her, his movements sluggish with a shared grief. "I'm so sorry, Anya," he whispered, his eyes red-rimmed. I don't know what I should have done." "It's not your fault," she said, the words automatic. She felt nothing. It was as if the part of her that could feel ambition, joy, rage, despair had been surgically removed. She retreated to her penthouse apartment, a sterile monument of glass and steel that had never felt like a home. She disconnected the doorbell, turned off her phone, and let the darkness claim her. She spent days in her bathrobe, staring at the city lights as they twinkled indifferently, a galaxy of success that no longer included her. The public scorn was relentless. Industry blogs published post-mortems of her career. The Perils of Hubris, one was titled. Another, more brutally, asked, "Was Anya Sharma ever as smart as we thought?" Her former peers crossed the street to avoid her. She was untouchable. In the depths of her despair, a memory surfaced, sharp and clear. It was from the early days, a year into Innovate. She'd been desperate for funding, on the verge of collapse. She met a potential angel investor, a man who had seemed genuinely interested. He asked her not about her projections, but about her why. Why this company? Why this fight? She'd given him a passionate, heartfelt answer about democratizing data security. He'd smiled, a kind, grandfatherly smile, and said, "Ambition is the engine, my dear, but character is the rudder. Never lose sight of which one truly steers the ship." She'd been so focused on the engine she'd forgotten his words. She'd forgotten the rudder. She'd taken his check, but she couldn't even remember his name now. The irony was a bitter pill. It was at her absolute lowest, a week into her self-imposed exile, surrounded by takeout containers and the crushing weight of her failure, that the first flicker of something else emerged. It wasn't hope. It was colder, harder. It was anger. It started with a news alert on her tablet, which she'd accidentally reconnected to Wi-Fi. Marcus Thorne's company, Apex Technologies, had just secured a major, though smaller, contract with a subsidiary of the Atlas Group. The article quoted an insider who said Apex represented the stable, professional leadership the industry needs. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. Marcus humiliates Harrison. The deal collapses. Marcus gets a contract. It was too neat, too convenient. Was it possible? Was Marcus Thorne not just a boorish fool, but a calculated one? Had he been a pawn in a larger game, or was he playing one of his own? And Mr. Harrison, his retaliation was so disproportionate, so absolute. This wasn't just about spilled wine. This was about something else, something personal. The meek investor was a myth. The man in the corner was a predator, and she had been his prey. The anger solidified, a cold, hard diamond in her chest. They had taken everything from her, Her company, her reputation, her future. They thought she was broken. They thought she was finished. Anya Sharma stood up, her body stiff, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. She looked down at the city, not with despair, but with a newfound, terrifying clarity. The game was not over, it had just begun, and she was going to learn the rules. The call came 2 days later from a blocked number. Anya, now showered, dressed, and existing on a strict diet of coffee and simmering rage, almost didn't answer. But the new, paranoid part of her brain, the part that was constantly scanning for threats and opportunities, made her pick up. Anya Sharma, her voice was flat, stripped of its former warmth. A voice from the grave, a smooth, cultured male voice replied. It was familiar, but she couldn't place it. I was hoping you'd still be among the living. Who is this? An old admirer, and I hope a potential ally. I believe we have a common problem. I'd like to discuss it. In person, the usual place, 1 hour. The line went dead. Anya stared at the phone, the usual place. There was only one place it could be, a members-only club downtown, the Ouroboros, where she had once closed many a deal. It was a place for power players, for whispers in dark corners, an old admirer. The voice, it clicked, Julian Croft. Julian was the CEO of Krasnov Industries, a sprawling, often ruthless conglomerate and the arch-rival of the Atlas Group. He had tried to acquire Innovate a year ago, making a hostile bid that Anya had fought off with every weapon at her disposal. He was brilliant, unscrupulous, and famously held a grudge. Meeting him was a pact with the devil, but then she was already in hell. An hour later, she sat in a secluded leather booth in the back of the Ouroboros. The air smelled of old money, cigar smoke, and secrets. Julian Croft slid into the booth opposite her. He was in his late 50s, with silver fox hair and the relaxed posture of a man who had won so many wars he was bored of victory. Anya, he said, his smile not reaching his cold, grey eyes. You look resilient. Cut the crap, Julian. Why am I here? Direct, I like it. He signaled a waiter for 2 glasses of Macallan neat. You've been through the ringer. Harrison is a formidable enemy. He doesn't just defeat you, he erases you. What do you know about him? She asked, leaning forward. More than most, less than I'd like, Julian admitted. Veritas Holdings is a ghost. It owns pieces of everything, tech, pharmaceuticals, heavy industry, you name it. But it's a nesting doll of shell companies. Harrison is the public face, but who he answers to, if anyone, is a mystery. He's a Puritan in a den of thieves. He has a pathological hatred for what he perceives as arrogance, for a lack of civility. He destroyed an $800 million deal over a glass of wine, Anya spat. Julian chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. No, my dear, he destroyed you over a glass of wine. The deal was collateral damage. He was making a point, to you and to everyone watching. Cross Alistair Harrison and you cease to exist. The waiter delivered the drinks. Julian took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch. He's also my problem. He's been quietly acquiring shares in Krasnov. I believe he intends to stage a silent coup, install his own yes-men, and dismantle my company for parts. He sees me as uncivilized. Anya almost laughed. The irony was too rich. So you want my help, the woman he just publicly crucified. You have a unique motivation, and you have something I need. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Inside knowledge. You were in the room with him. You saw how he operates. More importantly, during your due diligence on the Atlas deal, your team did a deep dive on their European data infrastructure. You have architectural schematics, security protocols, network maps, the blueprints to their digital kingdom. Anya's blood ran cold. He was asking her to commit corporate espionage. That data is proprietary. It's sealed under an NDA. If I give it to you, I'll go to prison. Julian shrugged. Prison is a theoretical concept for people like us, Anya. Besides, you're already in a cage. I'm offering you a key. Get me that data. Help me understand Harrison's vulnerabilities. Help me fortify my own company against him. In return, I will not only make your legal troubles disappear, I will give you a seat at my table. A senior VP position, the resources to rebuild your name, and most importantly, he paused, letting the promise hang in the smoky air. A chance for revenge. Revenge, the word was a drug, a shot of pure adrenaline. It was everything she wanted. To make Harrison feel a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on her, to show him she wasn't erased. It was also a trap, she knew it. Julian would use her and discard her. He was every bit as ruthless as Harrison, but he was right. She was in a cage, and he was offering a key, even if it was coated in poison. She looked at the glass of amber liquid in front of her. She hadn't touched it. She thought of the silent, judging eyes of Mr. Harrison. She thought of Marcus Thorne's smug face. She thought of her empty office and the cardboard box of her former life. She was standing at a precipice. One path led to a slow, quiet oblivion. The other led into the darkness, with a demon as her guide. Anya Sharma picked up the glass of scotch. She looked Julian Croft directly in his cold, grey eyes. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful love and life stories.